The first little carton of milk at a very low price, but after that it gets bad, and then it gets up to 275, 300%.
In a quiet shift that's shaking the foundations of North American trade, Mexico has turned its back on American milk. For years, the United States dominated the dairy aisles south of the border, sending gallons from Wisconsin's rolling hills and Ohio's farmlands to bustling markets in Mexico City and Guadalajara. In 2023 alone, Mexico snapped up $2.32 billion worth of U.S. dairy, a hefty chunk of America's global exports. But now, that reliable stream has slowed to a trickle. Canada, with its promise of cleaner supply chains and stricter standards, has stepped into the spotlight, leaving U.S. farmers reeling from a blow they didn't see coming. This isn't just about milk, it's about trust, and America's losing it fast. Why has Mexico, a longtime ally and neighbor, pulled the plug on U.S. dairy? Why now, and why Canada? Is this a fleeting hiccup or a sign of a deeper realignment in who gets to feed the region? Let's dig into the story. The U.S. dairy industry has long been a powerhouse, its products flowing across borders with ease. Mexico was a cornerstone of that dominance, soaking up a quarter of America's dairy exports. But cracks started showing in early 2025. On February 4th, President Trump's decision to slap a 25% tariff on Mexican imports, citing emergency powers, sent shockwaves through trade networks. Almost overnight, the cost of doing business with the U.S. spiked. By the first quarter of 2025, U.S. dairy exports to Mexico dipped by 0.5% compared to the previous year. A small but telling slide. Cheese exports, a key player, dropped 5% in volume, bucking global growth trends. For the first time in years, a major U.S. dairy product posted a quarterly decline. The numbers don't lie. America's grip on its biggest market is slipping, caught in a tangle of tariffs and shifting priorities. While the U.S. stumbles, Canada has been quietly carving out a new role. In 2024, Canadian dairy exports to Mexico surged from 2.86 million to 4.78 million, a 67% leap in just 1 year. It's still a fraction of the billions America once commanded, but it's a signal of something bigger. Mexico isn't just buying milk, it's buying certainty. New regulations in Mexico prioritize suppliers with transparent practices and strong domestic support. Canada's dairy industry, tightly regulated and backed by government policies, fits the bill. Meanwhile, the U.S. is paying the price for leaning too heavily on its tariff-exempt status under old trade deals. When political winds shift, even the most loyal markets can turn. For Mexico, it's not just about price anymore. It's about knowing exactly where their milk comes from and how it's made. The fallout for American farmers is brutal. From Wisconsin to California, dairy producers are caught in a vice of shrinking exports and skyrocketing costs. Feed, labor, and equipment expenses have climbed relentlessly, while milk prices swing wildly with global trends and tariff shocks. Margins are razor thin, and for many small farms, they've vanished entirely. By mid-2023, the number of licensed U.S. dairy farms had dwindled to just 26,290. A slow bleed that's left barns empty and rural communities hollowed out. These aren't just businesses shutting down, they're family legacies fading into silence. For farmers, it's not just about income, it's about identity, about the way of life they've known for generations. And now, Mexico's pivot to Canada threatens to deepen that loss. What's driving this shift? Canada's dairy industry has leaned hard into transparency and ethics, and it's paying off. On January 10, 2025, Canada rolled out a national code mandating plant-based rations for dairy herds, banning routine antibiotics and growth hormones. By mid-April, their Proaction Traceability system was fully operational, letting importers trace every drop of milk back to the farm it came from. Programs like Dairy Trace and Simply Trace log every animal's history, offering a level of accountability that's become a gold standard. Mexico's importers love it. They know exactly what they're getting. Compare that to the US, where 80% of dairy ingredients still lack electronic tracking. American producers rely on lot-based systems that can't match Canada's precision, leaving them vulnerable to scrutiny. In late June 2025, Mexico rejected a U.S. milk shipment for failing to meet these new ethical benchmarks. That single rejection cost millions and sent a clear message: high output isn't enough anymore. Mexico's decision wasn't just about one bad shipment. It reflects a broader change in what buyers value. Today's consumers, especially younger ones, don't just just care about price. They want to know how the cows were raised, what they ate, and whether antibiotics were involved. Canada's transparent labels and digital records answer those questions. Their milk might cost more, but it comes with a story of ethical production that resonates. In contrast, US producers are stuck with outdated systems that can't provide the same assurances. The gap in traceability isn't just a technical issue, it's a trust issue. And in a world where trust is the new currency, America's falling behind. For US farmers, the stakes couldn't be higher. Rural towns that depend on dairy revenue are staring down an uncertain future. The closures of small farms don't just hit bank accounts, they gut communities. Empty barns mean fewer jobs, less local spending, and a way of life slipping away. Analysts warn that without swift policy changes, the bleeding will continue. The US needs to diversify its supply chains, invest in better tracking systems, and match Canada's ethical standards. Otherwise, competitors will keep chipping away at America's market share. This isn't just a trade dispute, it's a wake-up call. The global dairy landscape is changing, and the US risks being left behind if it doesn't adapt. Canada's success isn't just about better systems, it's about a mindset. Their price insurance programs and strict production quotas have kept small dairies afloat for over a decade, fostering stability that American farmers can only envy. North of the border, barns stay full and communities thrive. In the US, the story is different. Loan defaults are climbing as input costs outpace revenue. Investors are wary of an industry plagued by volatility, and many farmers are left with no choice but to walk away. Mexico's importers have noticed. They see Canada's reliability and ethical assurances as a safer bet than America's unpredictable yields. It's a stark reminder that in today's markets, trust and consistency often outweigh sheer volume. The tariffs didn't help. When the US imposed new duties on Mexican imports, it wasn't just cars and avocados that took a hit. Dairy felt the ripple effects. Higher costs chilled demand, and US export volumes began to slip even before retaliatory measures kicked in. By the first quarter of 2025, overall dairy shipments had dropped by 27 billion pounds. Mexico, once a dependable buyer, started looking elsewhere. Canada was ready to step in, offering not just milk, but a promise of integrity. Their rigorous antibiotic testing and hormone bans, paired with farm-level traceability, have become a powerful draw. For Mexico, it's a chance to secure a supply chain that aligns with modern values that American producers are struggling to meet. This isn't just a story about trade flows, it's about what happens when a superpower takes its influence for granted. The US assumed Mexico would always buy its milk, no questions asked, but loyalty in trade isn't guaranteed, it's earned. Canada's billion-dollar deal with Mexico isn't just a contract, it's a signal that the rules have changed. Consumers want more than a cheap carton on the shelf. They want to know the story behind it, how the cows were treated, what they were fed, and whether the process respects the land and the animals. Canada's answering those questions with every jug it ships. The US, meanwhile, is scrambling to catch up. The clock is ticking for American dairy. Policymakers in Washington face a choice: double down on protectionist posturing or pivot to pragmatic solutions. Upgrading traceability systems and aligning with global ethical standards isn't optional anymore. It's a necessity. Without those changes, the US risks ceding more ground to competitors who've already mastered the game. For farmers, the fight is personal. Every closed barn is a family's livelihood lost, a community's heart weakened. The dairy industry isn't just about gallons and dollars. It's about the people who pour their lives into it. And right now, those people are watching their worlds slip away. Mexico's shift to Canada marks a turning point. It's not just about who supplies the milk, it's about who tells the better story. Canada's betting on transparency and trust, and it's winning. The US can still turn things around, but it'll take more than boosting production. It'll take a willingness to rethink how milk is made, tracked, and sold. The question isn't how much milk America can produce, it's whether it can rebuild the confidence that once made it the region's go-to supplier. For now, Canada's setting the pace, and the US is playing catch-up in a game it used to dominate. What comes next could reshape not just trade deals, but the bond between farmers and the families they feed. So, what would you choose for your table? A cheap carton with no story, or a pint crafted with care?